Hello, everyone. My name is Moshe Nave. I'm from the SAP community team. Today, we have in our SAP community call Murali, who's a solution advisor, and he's going to talk to us about speed up business processes with intelligent robotic process automation. Murali, please take it away.
Thank you, Moshe. Thanks for the introduction. So welcome to this community call on intelligent robotic process automation. In the next 40-50 minutes, I will go through what robotics process automation is, its use cases, what is SAP doing particularly in this space. I'll share some customer stories around how some of the other organizations are automating some of their business processes. And I'll also walk through the tool set to show you how you could create simple automations. In today's modern business environment, what you see is a collection of disparate systems from different decades. Some of them are on-premise, few are in the cloud, and some of the systems in the landscape would have come from mergers and acquisitions. And when you look at productivity tools, especially from Microsoft, they have rapidly increased from Excel, Word, PowerPoint to over a dozen tools in the last 25 years. So as much as we are moving businesses to an integrated digital world, we know that it's not a reality for everyone. We still deal with PDF invoices which come into your inbox, which need to be analyzed, and then you would copy paste the information from those invoices into your system of records. And most of the time, these processes work and they get the job done. But at what cost? The manual way of doing these tasks are time consuming. And more importantly, they're also error prone. And all these things lead to inefficiencies. So McKinsey recently looked at what could be saved by automating tasks, and their findings are astounding. In the report, RPA is right at the core of the next-gen operating model. And they found if they could automate 50 to 70% of the manually recurring tasks, you could reduce the cost efficiencies by 20 to 35%, and also reduce the process time by 50 to 60% with a return on investment most of the time in triple-digit percentages. So with these improvements, your staff can focus more on what matters the most, which is your customers. And this is a big reason why the RPA market is predicted to become a $15 billion US by 2021. So what is RPA? It's a software bot that mimics human interactions with various systems and eliminate the repetitive tasks that usually we would do. Now, RPAs have been around for close to 5 years, and typically, when you're using RPAs, you would connect anywhere between 2 to 12 systems to help users in front of the computer to be more efficient. And they've been great in both supporting as well as augmenting the staffs who are trying to complete their day-to-day business processes. However, one of the key challenges with these basic RPAs is that they don't perform well whenever there is a system upgrade or the screen UI changes. They would not be smart enough to be able to adjust the way humans would be able to interpret this changed UIs. So I will touch upon how RPA bots are becoming more smarter in the next few slides. But before that, let's have a quick look at some of the use cases for RPA currently. Now, RPA has a big value, especially in the back office processes. Now, when we're talking about finance or HR or even procurement, you see there are a lot of repetitive tasks out there which are great use cases for automating. And for example, when you look at procure to pay process, it is a process that spans across multiple systems from ERP, CRM, banks, and logistic companies. And there's a very good opportunity out there for customers to use RPA to be able to automate those business processes which span across all these systems, which may not necessarily be tightly integrated. RPAs also have a big role to play, not only in back offices, but also in the front offices. That's where the industry values, start exposing out. And RPAs, I would say, have a role to play in almost all the industries. But I've only highlighted few of those industries out here, based on the adoptions which have been reported by analysts. So whether you look at banking or insurance, there's a lot of adoption of RPA at the moment, especially when you go into a banking for and you're trying to create an account. So that's the customer onboarding process. There's a lot of opportunities there to automate those processes and provide more efficiencies. Similarly, in an insurance company, if you're looking to process claims much faster, again, RPAs help in achieving those things today. So whether and it doesn't matter which industry or which line of business you're dealing with, whenever you see there are a series of manual steps, those are good use cases of automating with RPA. And it's a great choice when you're dealing with legacy systems which don't have APIs. You could easily automate those things with RPAs. So what is SAP doing in this space? So last year, towards the end of 2018, SAP acquired a company called Contextor. And the new name for the product now is SAP Intelligent RPA. And when you look at the portfolio, it has got two types of modes, an unattended mode as well as an attended mode. An unattended bot is primarily used for back office functions. They can execute tasks and interact with different applications without any human intervention. These bots usually run in a separate server, maybe a virtual server, which can be dedicated for this particular purpose. And they're typically used for batch jobs, which could be scheduled to run in a particular frequency. On the other hand, the attended bots usually work along with humans and help speed up their task. They're meant to augment the humans and not replace them. These bots are usually triggered by the user's activity within their workstations, and the bot runs in the same workstation. To give an example, a call center agent who's speaking to a customer might use an attended bot to fetch customer information from several systems and populate their screen. This way, the call center agent spends less time switching between applications to find more information about this customer and could focus more on the conversation that they're having with this particular customer. So what is different about SAP's RPA? You would see the phrase intelligent used quite often in the RPA portfolio. The key things that differentiate SAP's RPA is its use of native APIs to tightly integrate with business processes. Rather than using the UI layer to be able to mimic human interactions and complete a process, it is tightly integrated with the systems by using those APIs. That way it's much more robust to those UI level changes. And you also see in the screen that there is a tighter integration with other aspects around conversational AI, being able to interact with humans in different ways, be it by chatbots, allowing humans to interact through chatbots and triggering business processes that way. You also get to see tight integration of machine learning aspects into the RPA. Typically, RPAs would use set of static rules and would just go by those rules. And if it detects some change during runtime, it just wouldn't know what to do. Whereas with machine learning, it starts to learn over a period of time as to how humans have been doing a particular task. And when humans also handle exceptions, it gets again retrained, and the RPA bot becomes much more smarter that way. So these are the different aspects that are bringing more and more intelligence into SAP's RPA. So the next slide will also give you more insights into what are the challenges of the classic RPA, what you would see typically today. and how SAP is adding intelligence into its RPA. This solution is currently available on top of SAP Cloud Platform. It's a cloud first approach that SAP has taken to enable customers to be able to quickly automate their processes using the RPA. And when you look at other capabilities on the cloud platform, there are a lot of new technologies that are also available and that SAP is making available today. And the RPA bot, which is also on the same platform, can benefit by easily integrating with those technologies. For example, if you're dealing with a structured, unstructured information, speech to text, for example, you could use speech to text APIs in SAP Cloud Platform to convert the speech to text and then pass it as an input to the RPA bot. Or you could have a scenario where the RPA bot needs to interact with third-party systems. You could leverage the third-party connectors which are also available on the cloud platform to ease those operations. Or it could be even a scenario where the RPA bot needs to raise a workflow request for someone to approve once it's finished automating some of those key processes. So you could mix and match all these scenarios that you would want based on the variety of technologies that are also available on the cloud platform. So how does the end-to-end automation tool look like? At the very front, it will interact with humans using chatbots from the conversational AI. So conversational AI is the name of the service on SAP Cloud Platform, and it primarily is to offer a chatbot functionality to customers to be able to create their own chatbots. So your chatbots could interface with humans and allow humans to interact in a natural language way with this particular chatbot, and it could then pass on that information to the execute phase where we have the RPA, which is much more scalable and performant, which could easily automate those tasks across variety of systems. And at the end, it would use machine learning to optimize the activities within those automation. So these three things brought together gives SAP the edge, which truly allows us to offer our customers an intelligent robotics process automation. So the next slide gives a bit of an overview as to the pre-built contents which are provided at the moment. So with SAP's RPA, we don't offer an empty box and tell customers to create their own scenarios, but what we're trying to do is try and ease the implementation efforts, because we know what are the key business processes, the best practices in each of those processes. And over a period of time, we would be providing business contents or pre-built contents for each of these solutions. So we've started this journey with S/4HANA. So as you can see on the slide, there are a couple of scenarios that it currently addresses. So customers can download these contents and then enhance that according to their requirements. But over a period of time, you will see more and more contents being added that would also address other cloud solutions like SuccessFactors, Ariba, and so on. So the next slide is on the pricing. Again, SAP has a very unique pricing model out here to ease the adoption. So you can deploy as many bots as you want, or you can have as many design studios also installed on your workstations. The good thing about it is it's available in a consumption model, which is part of the CPA option at the bottom, where you can purchase cloud credits. And once you have cloud credits, you can go in and turn on whatever service you want and experiment them quickly. So if you want to use, say, machine learning aspects along with your RPA, you could then quickly turn on these services and quickly do a POC to see how good you could automate that particular process. So I've also put a link at the bottom where you can go and find more information on the pricing and use the calculators. So the next section is I'm going to focus on some of the components of RPA. So there are three components that are key to RPA, but before I touch on them, I just want to revisit on an important concept of attended bots and unattended bots. So at SAP, we have a terminology that we associating with both of these things. So when you're dealing with an attended bot, you would hear the word digital assistant. Now, these are bots which are deployed on the user's workstation, which which are generally triggered by the user to help them obtain more information from different systems. And these usually automate a part of the process. You know, these bots will go in, do some work, fetch the relevant information, give it to the user, and then the user will continue with the rest of the process. On the other hand, we have unattended bots, which we refer to as the digital worker. These bots will be deployed on a dedicated server, which will be used to automate a whole process without any human intervention. And usually you would schedule these things to happen at a regular interval. You know, maybe you have Excel spreadsheets that are deployed to your server somewhere, and you want your unattended bot or your digital worker to go in, pull up these Excel spreadsheet information, and then create some journal entries in a couple of systems. So that's something that doesn't require human intervention, and that's something that can be automated to work on its own. So here are the main components of SAP's RPA. So on the left-hand side, what you see is the developer persona. So the developers would get onto their desktops where they have a desktop studio and would use the desktop studio to actually design this entire automation. And they would use these applications that are involved in this automation flow. And once they're done, they would create a package and export it. On the right-hand side, you would see there is an administrator persona that would import this particular package to Cloud Factory, which is again on the cloud platform. So once the administrator imports this package, he or she would be able to then configure this particular package or to run at a particular time, or to be able to assign to particular desktop agents. So once the scheduling has all been done on the Cloud Factory, you can, again, if you move towards the left, you would see there is this desktop agent. So this agent would be installed on every workstation if we are talking about an attended mode. If we are talking about unattended mode, then these desktop agents would be installed just on those dedicated servers where there would be batch jobs running. So when a user would trigger this particular desktop agent or this particular bot, the desktop agent would download this particular package from the Cloud Factory and would then start opening up these applications and perform that particular business task. So that's at a very high level, how these components would work together. Now I'm going to go into specifically into each of those components just to give you a bit of idea as to what functions they do. So the desktop studio, which I spoke about earlier, is more for the developers. So they get to use an editor or a development environment where they could go in and capture these application screens, create their workflow, their workflow path, and then also use JavaScript to go and add some more logic or functionality into their particular flow. So this is a Windows-based an IDE. So if you have MacBook, you probably wouldn't be able to install this one. It's pretty easy to use. If you've done Java-based development, it's much more easy for you to go behind the scene and also look at what this particular tool is doing in terms of generating the code. I will walk through this later in the session. The next component is the Cloud Factory, so which is the solution which is hosted on top of the cloud platform. And here, what you would do is you would register all the agents that you're going to use, and also create your environments, environments for dev, test, and prod, and also import your packages that have been developed by the developers, and you could execute and monitor jobs from the Cloud Factory. So this is a web-based interface. And the last one is the desktop agent, which gets installed on these workstations, which helps in starting these applications. And they also serve a lot of purposes around, helps in providing contextual help for the agents or the users, or also helps in providing the 360-degree view of things like a customer and so on. So this slide here is termed project delivery, shows the flow, so as to how we would go about developing a particular automation. So the desktop studio that you see on the left-hand side requires standard SDKs, which are provided by SAP. And once these SDKs are made available in the desktop studio, developers could go in and start capturing their different application screens, and could then go and generate the project. So when they generate the project, they have access to the JavaScript code, which again, they have the ability to go in and also change those things and also add their own validation. Once that is done, the developer would then export it and create a package, which is a compiled version. And that package is imported into Cloud Factory. And within Cloud Factory, you would then set up all the configurations as to which scenarios need to run on which desktop agents and at which duration and so on. Depending on that, the desktop agents would then pull this package from the Cloud Factory. So I'm going to quickly show a demo as to how we would just create a very simple automation. I have chosen SAP GUI based automation because I know there's still a lot of customers out there who are using SAP GUI screens to do some back office work. So I thought I'll probably use that as an example. So what I'm going to do is first open my desktop studio. So I'm just wearing the hat of a developer persona, and I've opened the desktop studio. And what you see is on the left-hand side, different sections here. So you have the Explorer section, a workflow, editor, and then a UI designer. So you generally use all these sections in order to create your automation. So the first one is the Explorer section, where I've created an application and I've just named it SAP Logon. And within it, I have created several pages or several screen captures. So if you see, the first one is a logon screen. And when you click on the logon screen, the next one, what you would see is the user ID. It'll ask you for user ID and password. And after that, what you see is the easy access menu. And from the easy access menu, you would jump to a transaction. In this case, it is a sales order update transaction. And at the end, I'm actually in the sales order transaction screen where I have updated a particular customer reference number. So that's the flow of the automation that I have created. It's a very simple thing that I just wanted to demonstrate as to how you would go about doing this. So once you've created your application, you could then use your right click here and then capture a new page and then open the particular window in SAP GUI, and then automatically it'll capture that screen and show it here. And once you get your pages or screens out here, you would need to identify this particular screen. So all the captured data will show at the bottom in the captured data menu. And what you would need to do is you would need to have a criteria for each of these pages. So in this case, I've just selected the name SAP Logon 760. And similarly, when you go on to another screen like the SAP Logon screen, you need to look at the captured data and pull out the attributes and see how you could make it unique. Because at runtime, the desktop agent needs to know which screen it needs to use to make sure that it's using the right screen to do that particular automation. So you need to select unique criteria here to make sure that that the desktop agent knows which screen it's looking at. And once you create the criteria, you also need to go into details and identify what is the page element that you are after. You need to define which page elements that your bot needs to interact with. So as you hover your mouse around, you will see it's highlighting different elements on the screen. In my case, I just want this bot to click on this particular system called QKX and proceed on. So I've selected this particular element QKX and then added into the criteria, say given choosing its name. Similarly, if I move on to another element, which is the VA02 screen, I want the desktop agent or the bot to be able to identify the orders field. So in this case, I have selected this particular order and I have made sure that I have set the criteria as VBAC VBLN. So the moment I select that as the criteria, it knows that it has to go and use that particular field for its interaction. So that's what you primarily do in the Explorers section, where you identify your pages and you would identify all the page elements within each of those pages. So once your pages and page elements have been done, the next thing is to actually design your workflow. So you would navigate to the workflow tab and you create your scenario. So in this case, as you can see, I have already put my pages in a sequence and I have designed the flow. You can actually go into this pages tab on the right hand side and you can drag and drop them and connect these pages together. That's very simple as to how you would bring all these pages together. And once you got your pages all laid out and connected them, next thing you need to do is to get into each of these pages here and define what activity you want to do. Now, the first thing I want the bot to do when it opens SAP logon screen is it needs to click on this system called QKX. So here on the right hand side, what you will see is all the activities. So if you here you can look for different events. In this case, I've used a double click event. I've just dragged and dropped double click onto this particular element. And what this would do is it would generate at the behind the scene a script or a JavaScript for this particular element. So you see here at the beginning, what you see is the name of the application, SAP Logon 760, and then you have it a page name that it follows. In this case, it's P Windows SAP Logon 76, and then the name of the page element, and then the name of the activity, which is click double. And if you recall, going back to Explorer, you will see this is the flow here, the hierarchy, SAP Logon, and then you have the name of the page and then the name of the page element. So that's exactly what it has done. It has just identified that page element and attached that particular activity called click double to it. So similarly, you could go into each of these particular pages and then perform your activity. So in this case, I need to set a value for a sales order number. So rather than an item click, I would need to go to item set and then bring this and drop it here. That way the system knows that it's expecting a value to be set for that particular field. Now I could go into the script and then hard code a value to say always whenever you're running this automated job, make sure you use this hard coded value. So I could open up the scripts, and in the scripts you have options to actually go and play around with this with the code that you saw earlier. So you have more control. If you know how to use JavaScript, you can actually go into this particular editor and then change things and add more logic that you want. So in this scenario, I have actually created a file called a JSON file where I have maintained all the values. So I'm actually in the location of this particular project, and I'm opening up my JSON file. And here you can see I have created a JSON file with a lot of name value parameters. And I have actually hard coded my username and password. There are better ways to do this, but for simplicity, I've just put my name password here. And I've also created a parameter for sales order number and the customer reference number. So this is what the bot will use at runtime to update the values. Usually in a scenario, you will have this information sitting in a spreadsheet, or you will have this information coming from an API from another system. And the bot would use this particular information to update the relevant sales orders. But for simplicity, I've just hard-coded things into a flat file and kept it inside this particular workstation. So right at the top, you would see there is a global event start function. And this is something that actually gets executed at the beginning of this execution. So here what I have done is I've used the SDK. So there is a help guide for the SDK, and you can also follow the instructions there to see how you want to deal with files. So I'm actually reading a particular file and then looking for the session as well as the sales order details, passing them onto a variable. And towards the end, when I actually update the sales order, you would see that I'm referencing those variables for the sales order customer reference number, and also have added my own commands here for keystrokes. One is an enter key, and then a control S for saving this particular sales order. So you could also, if you're proficient using JavaScript, you probably would be more comfortable just going here and adding these lines of code. But you could very well do all these things in the workflow designer too. You could do most of these things just with drag and drop and by customizing things on this particular field. So once your project has been ready, you can test this one or debug this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this debug screen here, debug option here, and I'm going to minimize all the screens. And what you see is the debugger has started and it's just waiting. And it's waiting because it is waiting for a trigger. So in this case, you can see at the bottom, you have my desktop agent. It's already popped up, and I have to manually trigger this particular workflow scenario. In this case, I've called it update sales. So when I click on update sales, it's going to pop up SAP logon screen and going to do all the operations that I have trained it to do. So it'll log on with my details, go to VA02, go to the sales order 1054, update the reference number to 07, and then it will do a control S and save this particular sales order. So that's a very simple operation that the automation that the bot has performed, and now it has given back the control to the user. I'm going to now stop this particular debugger, and I'm going to go back to the editor. So once as a developer, I have done with this particular process and got everything working, I would just need to go into the file menu and export this project. And what this would give is a zip file in the project folder. And you would need to take the zip file and give it to the administrator to import that in the cloud factory. So I'm going to now switch to the browser, where I'm going to just give you a bit of a walkthrough for this cloud factory. So this is available currently in the cloud platform, Cloud Foundry environment. And I'm just logging into the cloud factory. So here at the top, you have this home menu, which gives you a bit of stats as to how many agents have been registered, what's the status of jobs, and so on. In the management, you have options to create your environment, which is the dev, test, prod environments. You can also create a hierarchy, and this is mandatory. You need to define, which are your workstations, and you also would need to define if it is going to be in an unattended mode. You need to define or reserve them as to which time slots these things need to be scheduled. So this is where you would define all these workstation hierarchies. And in the monitoring, you would get to see list of all the jobs that health of all the jobs, just a snapshot of them. And here also you can go and filter and see the status of each of these jobs, the agents that are also connected at the moment, and so on. The key thing that I wanted to show is the packages section. So as I mentioned earlier, the developers would export a package and the administrators would import it in the Cloud Factory. So this is where administrators would go in and click on this import and then import that particular package. So I'm not going to do it again. I've already imported a particular package, so I'll just probably edit the configuration just to show you what it would require. So when you import that configuration, import the package, it'll tell you, select which scenarios you want to use, select whether it needs to be in an attended or in an unattended mode. And if it is a scheduled mode, then you just need to define what is the date and time frequency that this particular bot needs to run. So here you can, once you define this, and if your workstation has been reserved, it'll automatically, when the time comes, it'll open up these applications and the desktop agent will start running those business processes in those applications. So that's how you would run those unattended scenarios. And while I'm here, if just also want to point you to the Cloud Platform website. So if you want to know more about RPA functionality, you could go onto the Cloud Platform capabilities and look for orchestration. It's right at the bottom, and select SAP Intelligent RPA. So from here, you can get access to all the other collaterals as to what is the feature scope. And if you also want to get information on the pricing, then you could jump onto the pricing calculator straight from here. So I thought I'll let you guys know that you have access to the Cloud Platform website from here. And whatever I showed you at the moment, I have also blogged on how you would go about creating this particular simple automation with the SAP GUI. I have already posted a blog on the SAP community with steps and screenshots, so you can go through that also if you want to know more about it. So I'm going to now switch back to presentation. Let's focus on some of the solution architectures that are possible. So the first one that I want to talk about is the attended mode, where, as I mentioned, the RPA solution is available on the Cloud Platform. So you can benefit from the remaining capabilities that are also available on the platform. So this is a case where you have end users who probably are using a chatbot to interact with the system. And these chatbots could then be actually, could then pass on that information to an RPA. And the RPA could use machine learning for maybe extracting information from an invoice, and it could then feed that information back to SAP backend system through the connectivity service. So this is one example is how you would architect this type of scenario. In an unattended mode, where you want to schedule something that runs in a batch mode, maybe every night, you may have a requirement to post information or update information in both SAP and non-SAP systems. So this is where you could use things like SAP Cloud Platform integration, which offers those connectivity options for the SAP solutions and open connectors for non-SAP solutions. So you could leverage some of those capabilities in the cloud platform to address those kind of scenarios. So the last section that I want to talk about is the customer success stories. So there are a lot of customer stories available in different industries. So I've just picked two of them. So the first one is from Hello Bank. So this is European bank, and one of the challenges that they faced was they frequently launch new offers for their online banking, and the time to onboard a customer was a lot. It's somewhere around 20 minutes. And the reason was that there was a lot of manual steps, and like there were 17 data processing steps, and they had to go into different systems to identify and validate customer or the information that the customer is giving. So they decided to use RPA in order to solve this particular problem. They created attended bots that could support these agents who are actually talking to those customers. And using these bots, they were able to automate all those know your customer control tasks, and also were able to do systemized checks. And using these bots, they were able to integrate about 12 different applications and provide that information in just one single UI. So this greatly increased efficiencies for the agents. At the same time, customers also were happy because they were able to get onboarded much more quickly. So, and if you look at the stats, there was an 80% reduction on the average handling time, and that was a big win for this particular customer. And the way they did that was by deploying these attended bots on 200 workstations and enabling those agents to be able to serve those customers much more effectively. The time to market for deploying this bot solution was about 6 weeks for them. So as you can see, if you have to really go and touch all these different 12 different applications and extend them to connect all of these things together, it would be several months. Whereas without really having to extend or touch these applications, using these RPA tools, they were able to easily connect these processes together and automate them. The next story is from NG. So this is another European customer again, based, they're more focused on utilities. For them, their challenge was that they have over 5,000 agents who receive a lot of customer queries, and most of the time it's related to their billing. And the billing is so complex that sometimes the agents have to go through multiple systems, over 250 parameters, to try and identify, what promotion is going on, what's the month of the year, and see all those things in order to arrive at at the right diagnosis as to how we need to respond to this particular customer. And that was taking a long time, and it was not a good experience for their end customers. So they also turned to RPA to see how they could simplify this whole process, and they created attended bots to support their agents. And these bots were able to provide them a contextual interface that could provide a 360-degree view of the customer. So when the customer calls, just by putting their details like their name and phone number, they were able to quickly obtain all the relevant information about this customer, and they were able to have a much more meaningful conversation, much more faster. And these bots not only just gathered that information, but they were also able to provide a situation and contextual assessment after analyzing the customer data. So this is again something that was a big win for this particular customer. And if you look at their first call resolution, that was like 90%. So that was again a very big a change in terms of resolving those customer queries right at the beginning. In terms of time to market, they took about 12 weeks to go to the time to roll out this particular solution. And as you see, the solution is not just about fetching information from different systems, but also doing a contextual assessment. So there was a lot of intelligence behind it to be able to do those things. So that's all I wanted to cover. I would, before I open it up for Q&A, just want to just go through some key takeaways for you all for this session. So SAP's Intelligent RPA is an end-to-end offering for end-to-end automation. So as I mentioned earlier, this is on the cloud platform. Any intelligent technology that that you would want to plug in, it's readily available. And SAP's Intelligent RPA is much more robust because it leverages those APIs for performing those business operations. And SAP is also providing those out-of-the-box automation contents for customers to be able to quickly implement those scenarios. So at the moment, we've started with S/4HANA solution, and this is going to expand to other solutions too, so that customers can easily automate these processes across all these different stacks. So with that, I will open up for Q&A.
Thank you, Murali. So you have one question in the tab. You can have a look at it.
Okay, so basically this is same as BDC recording in SAP ABAP. If it is, then in case we have several iterations of the same process, how do we know which of the iterations have encountered errors or successfully executed? How can we correct those with errors? So thanks for the question. So I don't think you can compare it exactly as a BDC recording. So it's not just about, I mean, the recording that, or the automation that I showed you was more about UI level, where you just go into different screens and you capture all those screen elements, and then you automate those things. But that's not where we are trying to differentiate ourselves. We want to be able to make use of APIs and be able to use APIs in a way in which we can create much more robust automation. It's not just at the UI level that we're focusing on automation. And at the same time, it's also about making it a bit more intelligent and using other technologies in order to also be able to efficiently automate some of those processes, because we're not just talking about an SAP system these days. Usually automation will touch a dozen systems when you want to automate a process, and very few of those systems will have ABAP. Sometimes you will start with an ABAP screen, and then you will move to a web-based screen, and then you will move maybe to an Excel spreadsheet to download all the information that you've captured so far. So it's a different type of UI technologies that would be generally involved in doing all these automations. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you. In case you want to speak up, you have the feature of raise your hand, or you can type another question in the chat or in the Q&A tab. Okay, so I guess we have no more answers. Murali, I would like to thank you for this great webinar and presentation. I invite you all to continue the conversation, ask questions, seek information in the SAP community under the relevant tags. And that's it for today. So thank you everyone for attending.
Thanks for the opportunity, Moshe.
My pleasure, and thank you.